that we were talking about earlier today on our show, and I wanted to talk to you live about. There are now two hurricanes projected to hit the U.S. Gulf Coast and parts of Florida next week on the same day.
I'm beginning to think we need to create some term, if nobody else has created sort of the 2020 scenario or the 2020. I mean, because this is just crazy. We haven't seen this happen since 1933, David. Imagine the last time we had two named storms simultaneously affecting the United States was in 1933. So yeah, we've got two of them out there right now. One of them is Tropical Storm Laura, which is out there in the Atlantic, but is already getting close to Puerto Rico. It'll affect Puerto Rico tomorrow, and then we've got Tropical Depression 14, which will become, in all likelihood, Tropical Storm Marco tomorrow.
And you mentioned that it's been something like 90 years since the United States has had two hurricanes hit the continental United States at the same time. I mean, I guess it seems like, it's been 100 years since we've had an economy this bad. It's been forever since we've had a pandemic this bad. Why don't we have two hurricanes break a record as well?
That's pretty much exactly my point, and the point I think a lot of other people are making, and this could, look, we shouldn't make too light of all this, because you saw in the Northeast, and you were without power for days. I know some people who were out of power or without Wi-Fi at least for 2 weeks. So tropical storms can cause a lot of damage, and especially this one ends up doing a direct hit on Puerto Rico, which has been hit over and over and over again with one nightmare after another since Hurricane Maria. So it's something that there's a tropical storm warning already in effect for Puerto Rico. So they have to watch out for it. That storm then is forecast, the cone has it going over northern Hispaniola, the Dominican Republic, and Haiti. It would then also go over the northern coast of Cuba, go over the Florida Keys. The cone at that point, the further out you go, as I'm sure everybody has heard, the cone, the further out you go, the further the less certain the track is going to be. But Florida, the extreme southern tip of the mainland, so not Miami-Dade County where I am, further south than here, is still within the cone, but now the big population center of Miami-Dade County, Broward County, Palm Beach County are now out of the cone altogether. But it could go right over the Florida Keys. At that point, it's still supposed to be a tropical storm, but then it could strengthen into a hurricane in the Gulf, and as a hurricane. So again, Laura is a pretty serious storm, and Marco could be as well.
It's so interesting, Antonio. You mentioned Connecticut a moment ago. Here in Connecticut, it was just 2 weeks ago when the hurricane came through. A lot of people thought it was going to be the western part of the state or western Massachusetts, and didn't realize, because people here aren't used to hurricanes, that if you're on the eastern edge of a hurricane in the northern hemisphere off the Atlantic, you're going to get whacked by the winds. And it's so pretty here with so many trees, and limbs came down. And so, of course, people lost power for a week. People lost internet for a week. And ever since then, people are now paying incredibly close attention to the news about what's coming up the eastern seaboard.
Right.
Given where you are in Miami, people are so used to hurricane seasons and so used to the number of storms that come through every end of summer. What's the prevailing? Does it strike people as news when they hear, oh, well, there are a few more hurricanes this season than last or than ever? Does that really matter to them?
Oh yeah, it does. And I think, and down here, people can be kind of sanguine about it and so say, oh, no big deal. It's just a tropical storm. But again, look at what the tropical storm did up there. It's all you have to do is be in the wrong place at the wrong time. People died during, the tropical storm that hit the Northeast. If you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, a branch comes down on your car, you're dead. And so you have to be very careful. And again, branches fall down, they bring down power lines, and you have a couple of trees that come down, block roads, then power crews can't get to it. You can have a chain reaction of problems, even with much, much smaller storms. In fact, if you go back in Florida history, well, of course, the huge, Andrew was catastrophic down here in Miami-Dade County, but some storms that weren't that big. Katrina was terrible down here, even though it was not nearly as strong when it came through South Florida as it was when it hit Louisiana. So and tropical storms can trigger tornadoes. They can trigger all sorts of, intense winds in specific areas. So you can't dismiss it. And I think most Floridians know that, and so they're careful, even though there is a little bit of that attitude of, oh, yeah, it's just another tropical storm. And I should say, I kind of gave short shrift to the storm that's going to be Marco. Marco then, which it's not yet Marco, could be tonight. Marco is going to go over, at least the center of the cone has it going over the northeastern edge of the Yucatan Peninsula in Mexico as a strong tropical storm tomorrow. It's then supposed to strengthen into a hurricane when in the Gulf, but then it's supposed to weaken but still hit as a fairly strong tropical storm. Somewhere the cone, both cones, the cone for Laura and the cone for Marco, have kind of shifted toward the southwest. That's why Miami-Dade County is no longer in the cone for Laura. But Marco, the soon-to-be Marco, goes pretty much from the cone, out 4 days, 5 days, goes all the way from almost from the southern tip of Texas, well into Louisiana. The cone for Laura goes a few days out, goes all the way from the western coast of Florida, well into Louisiana. So the cones actually overlap, and this is what I'm, referring to, the kind of the 2020 scenario where you could have.
So what does that do? I mean, when the cones overlap, do they both diminish each other? Do they intensify the winds in some places? I mean, how does that work?
Yeah, look, I'm only an amateur meteorologist because of the many years that I spent working in South Florida, which you spend many, many hours talking to meteorologists and learning about, hurricanes, tropical storms. So I'm a very well-educated consumer. I'm not sure what happens if the two storms were to merge. Again, I think it's extremely unlikely. We're seeing, one extremely unlikely situation where you're going to have two, where you're likely going to have same storms hitting the United States at the same time. It's also extremely unlikely once the storms get in, even more unlikely, obviously, but it's unlikely. Even out in the Atlantic, it doesn't happen very often that two storms that are already named, end up, combining. I'd have to look it up and see when the last time was that happened. I'm sure it has never happened where they both hit the United States at the same time and somehow both hit in the same place at the same time, which I just shudder to think of what that would mean, especially if that were, if it were on the southern, the southwestern tip of Laura and the northeastern tip of Marco, which would be, low-lying Louisiana.
For everybody who's watching us live right now, whether it's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, all our various feeds, Facebook again, also through HAPS. We're using a HAPS TV app for Antonio and I to communicate live. And we have somebody else here who wants to join the shot. So what happens? We have kids at home.
Let me say,
Zeke, you want to come in and say hello? No. So, but anyway, Antonio, I want to remind everybody that Antonio is one of our pillars of Quick Hits News, which is the daily 15-minute show that comes out every day. It publishes around now. You can subscribe and get it on YouTube. And Antonio, since you've been with us in Quick Hits News, literally since, I guess, April, you've been spending a lot of time focusing on COVID-19, in part because Florida has been the epicenter literally now for 6 to 8 weeks. What is the latest with COVID-19 in your home state?
Look, the numbers have been going down. There's no question. Deaths have remained kind of, stubbornly high, over 100 deaths a day over the past week. We hit a high that was nearly 300. Cases at one point jumped over 15,000 a day. But they've come down significantly. We're still seeing a couple thousand, cases every single day. And I remember when we first started doing Quick Hits, in late May or so, I remember saying, we're alarmed because Florida, which had been a very good, had been very good in the grand scheme of COVID across the United States, and that it had not had that many cases, was all of a sudden seeing 1,000 a day. So we're down, and we're down very significantly from the peak in July, but we are still seeing significantly more than we were seeing 2 months ago. Again, an improving situation, but there's a lot to still worry about, and I certainly am careful all the time.
Yeah, I mean, Antonio, for people who are familiar with Quick Hits and watch us, they know from your broadcast that you're a professor down in South Florida, that you've got students. It's been sort of a big issue whether or not the classes would reopen. But for all the people who are joining us through whether it's Reddit or all the other formats who haven't been watching us, tell us a little bit about the situation where you're teaching and what the protocols have been and what the general attitude has been with your students in terms of trying to actually have in-person classes.
Yeah, it's one of my part-time jobs. So I've taught for the last 3 years at the University of Miami. Just teach one class, working in the School of Communications, working with mostly with students who want to be broadcast journalists. And I just started teaching on Tuesday. Classes at the University of Miami started on Monday, and there's you name it. There's pretty much that option at UM. I think about a fifth. I'm not sure, don't hold me to the exact numbers, but about a fifth of all students, a quarter to a fifth of all students chose to go online only. So aren't on campus, or aren't in Miami at all, or if they are in Miami, they're still staying at home and doing all their classes online. Other students have classes that are hybrids, where some might go to class on day X and other students go on day Y. And then you have rarer in-person classes like mine. What I do requires a television studio, so it is much more effective if we're actually there in person. So my class was what they call in-person only. So anyone who was not willing or couldn't be in Miami and did not want to go to the university could not do so. That said, it's kind of a it does feel like this bizarro world where I have to teach with a mask. My students sit there in social distanced seats, with masks on the whole time. We have, it's a big television studio. Anybody who knows television studios, you probably have seen. They usually have these big, heavy doors that hold, noises out, and so we've got two huge doors wide open to provide for ventilation. And the kids, most of them, when they actually have been doing presentations, most of them have been comfortable taking their masks off, but at least one is not comfortable, and more power to her. She can. I said, you can only do what we're comfortable doing. The set is a good 20 feet away from the maybe even more than 20 feet away from the first student seat. So it's relatively safe, as safe as you can be in these situations. But yeah, it's just a very odd, it's an odd world. But I'm glad that at least so far, the UM has very serious, as measures to protect students and faculty. The students all had to be tested before classes started. Every day that you go to campus, both students and faculty are supposed to go through a symptom check and get all clear to be able to go to campus. People have to be wearing masks no matter where they are on campus. And a whole bag with kit that had masks and alcohol wipes and alcohol, hand sanitizer, and even a digital thermometer so that we could check our temperatures if we had any doubt.
It has been just such a truly remarkable situation on so many college campuses for so many people, of course. And Antonio, I mean, a lot of people will recognize you as, Antonio Mora. He was a backup to Peter Jennings at ABC. He was the news anchor on Good Morning America for several years. He was the top anchor in Chicago, the top anchor in Miami. You've had just such a remarkable career, and you've traveled to so many places. I wonder, Antonio, if you can put this year, 2020, in the United States in some sort of perspective in terms of, as a journalist, if there's anything that it compares to, or if this is just how strange this year is compared to the normal news cycle that so many of us are used to.
The only thing that I can compare it to in my lifetime is what we went through. I lived in New York during 9/11, and I think that's the only thing that's even remotely comparable. And but it's even that. An assault happened on one day, and worried that it could happen again, and we were very concerned, and it was obviously horribly tragic. But this lack of security, this wake up concern, having to go out, being to really see for months we really couldn't see family, even family that was nearby. You weren't supposed to all and do that. And I have a daughter in California I haven't seen since Christmas time, and and a son in Atlanta who I probably won't see until Thanksgiving. And the effect on the economy, on everybody's psychology, and it's just it's an assault from this invisible enemy that not comparable to anything else in my lifetime.
Yeah. We've been talking with Antonio Mora. Antonio, I'm going to let you go because it's 5:20 on a Friday night. And for everybody who wants to see more of Antonio, and again, he's one of the best. He is on Quick Hits News virtually every day. He's been leading our coverage of COVID-19. Such great insights and perspective from an incredible lifetime of journalism and a lot of journalism still ahead. Antonio, thanks so much for doing this, and appreciate everybody who's been watching us live on HAPS and on Quick Hits News and on our Facebook page. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you next week, unless something big happens over the weekend. And Antonio, I'm going to be calling you.
All right, thanks, there. This was fun.